My name's Barbara, as Brett said, and I'm one of the dietitians at Eisenhower Health, and I am excited to discuss this topic today, navigating the rising cost of food. So just to talk about the relevance, as you probably already noticed, the food prices have been going up, cost of a lot of things going up, so, this affects, when you're grocery shopping, not just the food, but, even the non-food items. The reason for, some of these costs going up, I mean, there's obviously been a lot of issues with availability, a lot of empty shelves, and that sort of thing. So, but one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it, because even when I have, searched the internet for, tips and that sort of thing, I find there are like a lot of, recommendations that don't apply, to me, so, it's definitely not one size fits all, so while I, can discuss a lot of the, pros and cons and, what to take into account, when you're looking to save money at the store, it's not going to be one size fits all. Like never buy this in individual servings, or never always buy bulk. It's not going to be one size fits all. But we'll discuss like all the different variables and what to take into account. When you're looking at trying to get the most for your dollar at the store. And again, I'll talk about some of the grocery items that aren't necessarily food, but items that, you might want to invest in or make sure you have so that you can save money. So, for example, certain storage containers and, that sort of thing, might come into play. So just getting started, when you're navigating the grocery aisle, there isn't going to be one store necessarily that I can say shop this store. This is where all the prices are. But finding what works for you. I personally have not been to a physical store in years, but I know that other people are really like the experience and want to pick out their own produce, don't want a shopper buying their produce. So as far as making that work for you, I shop with like an app where I can see the different prices of stores and try and navigate each individual store to get the best deal from a couple stores. But that can backfire, if you're paying a fee for each delivery, if you're going to more stores than necessary, if you're paying an extra $5 service fee to save $2, obviously that would not make any sense. So, at some point it sometimes makes sense to pay the extra cost on, let's say, one item out of three, and save a service fee. But if you're the kind of person that likes to buy everything in person, then knowing, which store you frequent the most, investigating like where the savings are at that store, may come into play. So if it's, let's say, a grocery chain that's close to your house, knowing like where their sales are on produce and frozen food, knowing like their own store brand is typically going to, be cheaper than the competition, as well as their sales. If you shop physically at more than one store, just, navigating like your own schedule, if there are certain things that you're able to buy in bulk, when you're going to do that, versus, what you're going to get closer to home. And mastering that store so that you aren't hit with some of the things that they are making more profit from than you want to spend. Planning, that would be the first strategy, right? That to have a plan. Don't just like walk into a random store and randomly buy things, right? So you probably know that, but planning takes many forms. So being able to identify what your needs are and prioritize your needs. That's important. So if you're not somebody who does a lot of cooking, then ideas such as making everything from scratch to save money is probably not going to make any sense for you. Not to mention, there's also now, costs that are rising on electric and gas, so taking those things into consideration as well. If something requires a lot of stove time or oven time, that's going to use a lot of energy, that might not necessarily be an overall saving. So, as far as certain brands, I know like sometimes people, get stuck into thinking, I love this one product, and, I really don't want to try a different one, but sometimes there is a trial and error, especially with some of the store brands and generic like brands. If you're able to find the alternative, in the store brand. That sometimes can be a savings, but then of course sometimes not. I mean, if the popular brand comes in a bigger container and or is on sale, so always checking the unit cost and looking at that compared to like what your use of the item is going to be. So even if something in a big size is cheaper in unit cost, but you're never going to get to 3/4 of it for the amount that you use, that might make no sense. So there's so many different factors, and while I can't like necessarily troubleshoot every single item for you, like I just want a take-home point to be that you understand that it isn't going to be necessarily for you. What works best for you might not work best for somebody else. So even though some items might look like they cost more, it might make sense, for your scenario to get something that's more wrapped in smaller portions, or requires less cooking and that sort of thing. So okay, and the unit cost, that is usually displayed, whether you're at the physical store or if you're shopping in a store app or a shopping app, you should be able to see the unit cost. And sometimes it varies. I mean, if it's like in this picture here, you see jars, right? So usually you'll see it, by ounce or something like that. If it was a sauce, for fruits and vegetables, sometimes you'll see it per pound. If you're in a shopping app, it might give you by pound or by item, like estimated, let's say by apple or by sweet potato, or you can convert it sometimes in some of those apps, to pound, and usually pound's going to give you a better picture, but not always. So, but just being able to compare the unit price is important. Planning. So, not everybody loves to plan. Some people love to plan. So if you're not one that loves to plan, then you might want to plan when you plan. So thinking about like when that's going to be realistic, do making the time, for the week and making a list, and navigating that. So as far as your needs, your lifestyle and habits, we talked a little bit about that. Another factor is your space, right? So, stocking up on frozen food for the next month might not make any sense if you have a teeny freezer, so, that's something to, take into account as well, and I know, especially between disasters, preparation and, food shortages, a lot of people in the last 3 years, have wanted to stock up on a lot of things, so, depending what your frozen food storage limitations are, you can, look at frozen food, but there's also pantry storage, if you're able to buy some things dry, you're going to get, much longer shelf life from those items, and your perishables versus your non-perishables. If you only do shopping, let's say once a week, even making your your menu work in accordance, with the perishability of the food, so that you don't have a lot of waste. So that's the last thing you want to do is, spend a lot of money on beautiful fresh food and then have to throw it out in a week because you didn't get to it. So you want to, make sure you're coordinating your food with your menu planning. So, for example, you might, for the first few days of the week, base your menu on some of the refrigerated, fresher items. As the week goes by, if you don't shop frequently, then you might move into, more of the frozen items, and or the pantry items. I'm going backwards for a second. And the perishability. Let's say you have something, let's say a salad that maybe isn't going to make it to the second half of the week. You might have some other vegetables that are hardier that will last longer. You might eat, still be able to use fresh food, for the remainder of the week. But just knowing, which one to use when, so that you don't have waste is important. Okay, so veggie shopping, which is almost one of my favorite topics, I think, shopping for veggies. So fresh or frozen is always a question that we get. So, I said to some other dietitians, I think I'm giving this lecture just to tell people that frozen food is okay. In some cases, it might even be better quality than what you get fresh. It's picked at peak ripeness, and been washed and or blanched, and you don't have to wash it and futz with it and cut it into pieces. You don't have to worry about it rotting as much as you have to worry about the perishability of fresh food. So there are a lot of advantages to frozen food. So and frozen veggies in particular. As far as fresh food, you have typically the option to hand select your veggies or buy some things that are already pre-bagged. And if they are pre-bagged, they may vary in like how prepped they are. If they've been triple washed and or shredded. All these things are going to affect, the perishability, to some degree, perhaps the nutrients, but definitely the cost, right? Which is what this lecture is about. So even the organic versus the no organic, the $1 million question, that's definitely an individual preference for some of these things, but it isn't that the organic is always more expensive than the not organic. So, certain foods maybe more on the list of foods that will retain pesticides more than others, but a lot of things can be rinsed and washed. So whether you buy an actual ready-made produce wash or you make your own, there are a lot of good recipes online at the I think USDA has a lot of information, on this sort of thing, like how to, wash your produce and that sort of thing. So, especially, this isn't a one size fits all, but, things to take into consideration, certain foods in general, like even as we get into the topic of fruit, where you don't eat the skin, some of those items are not necessarily the on the list of foods that retain the highest, pesticide residues, if that is something that's concerning to you. But there is, produce wash if you don't want to make your own. That's very easy to buy in a spray bottle, or there are others that just go into, if you have a stainless steel bowl and rinse like that. But it's definitely not something that like has to all be one thing. So, whether it's organic or not organic, there's ways to wash your produce that will help with that. As far as the question of whether it makes sense to pay for the food being prepped, it just might, right? So certain things that, come pre-washed and shredded. If that's not something that you're even able to do yourself, or that you want to do yourself, or that the investment of time is not going to be worth it, it might certainly make sense to buy it like that. Especially, if it's in bags where it's, sealed and has a good shelf life, that is definitely an option. So, um, taking all those factors into consideration. Um, oh, I think, oh, this is actually a little bit on the same topic. So we talked a little bit about this, and the size of the bag is one of the things I wanted to talk about on this slide. So depending on whether you're shopping for one person or if you're shopping for many people, and how fast you're going to go through this food item. These are big factors to take into consideration, because if a huge bag is much cheaper, I mean, even these carrots that are here, right? You can buy maybe a 1 pound bag, you can buy a 2 pound bag, you can buy a 3 pound bag, but and I'm sure the unit cost will go down as the bags increase in size. But if you're just going to have a bunch of wilted carrots, by the time you get to, those last, 2 pounds of carrots, then it might make no sense. So it might still be cheaper to buy the smaller bag that costs less. If your unit cost for a bigger bag is less, but you're never going to get to the rest of the bag before it rots. So, those are all things to take into consideration. Frozen foods we talked a little bit about, and this applies not just to vegetables, but fruit as well. I'd say one of the biggest ones where you can really, witness the cost savings would be berries. A lot of times, you see berries in the regular produce department, and I mean, sometimes they go on sale, and especially if you shop in person and can really inspect them and see if they're ripe, and or if there's like no signs of mold and this sort of thing. You might be able to get some great deals like that and enjoy fresh berries, but it's often more cost efficient to buy it frozen. Depending on what you're using it for, of course, is going to matter too. I mean, if you're making something that is contingent upon having fresh berries, then maybe frozen berries won't work. But if you're putting it in a smoothie or something like that, not only may you find it much less expensive in the frozen department, but you might be able to get a better quality item. For example, the organic blueberries might be much less expensive than the fresh, not organic berries. And as the bag gets bigger, this benefit might become even more visible. So a large bag of frozen blueberries may be significantly cheaper than the cost of an equivalent amount of berries, organic, and even better cost than your regular berries. So you might be able to get better quality in a different form. So I know a lot of people sometimes think to save money that they'll have to give up a quality in some way. And in some cases, it's almost the exact opposite. When they switch from frozen berry, I mean regular berries that weren't organic in their smoothie, and then switch to organic frozen. Sometimes when you have the organic option, two, it's picked at the peak ripeness, so they're not throwing away every other berry because it's too tart or too moldy, and they're able to enjoy what it is they enjoy eating, and in probably larger servings than they would be able to experience if they were buying it fresh. So, but sometimes you can get deals on fresh fruits and vegetables, and shop sales and that sort of thing. So that's not to say that there's not a lot of fresh items available too, and being able to even just cut the cost with some backup stuff that is available frozen, and can help a lot as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be all or one. You can still shop fresh and use that when you're able to, and then have the backup of the frozen items. And again, the unit cost is going to be a factor, and even the frozen food section can sometimes be enlightening, if you will. So there are definitely still going to be name brands that you might see at a regular grocery market that are not going to be as cost effective as the store brand, and that's not always the case, but it is often the case, so reading the unit costs, and sometimes switching brands might make sense. So as well as the size of the bag. So, and all these factors, the size of the bag, the brand, is all going to affect it. And last on this list, adding the additional price for individual size packages and/or pre-seasoned. And that's something you might notice in the frozen food section as well. If it's like little individual microwave and serve, containers, then, that might not be as cost effective as buying a bigger bag and transferring it into your own microwavable container to cook. It's the same as pre-seasoned, and this is, of course, a lecture on the cost of food. We're not getting into other factors, such as, like, do you even want the extra salt of the pre-seasoning, or do you want the extra butter sauce? So it's usually win-win to season it yourself, especially if you are shopping for any other health concerns or special dietary needs. That's usually a pretty easy savings to not get the ones that are pre-seasoned, and being able to make that yourself. But again, not always. So finding, factoring in all these variables and finding what's best for you is important. So fresh fruit, we talked a little bit about this already, but some other points to make are local and in season. So there is a farmer's market, or multiple farmers markets, in the desert. So if you really enjoy fresh food, locally grown produce is available, and you can shop that directly at the farmers market. There are even, places that will do delivery, that are from local farms, that will, send you, produce and that sort of thing. So if fresh is your thing, being able to get that closer to home, can be a big savings. And again, like I mentioned earlier, sometimes the organic versus not organic, you can memorize the, different lists of pesticide residues, but, I'd say generally speaking, one of the major, points would be if you're eating the outer part of it that might have been sprayed, or if that can easily be washed, or if that can easily be peeled. And we talked a little bit about the frozen food and the longer shelf life. So, but yeah, check out your farmer's market if you are into fresh fruit and fresh vegetables. And we talked a little bit about the frozen fruit and the frozen vegetables. But as far as the different stores, this can be a big thing as well. So, depending on if you're somebody who, is going to, drive an extra mile to, save $5, then, comparing, the different stores of what you're going to get at each store, might be something to take into consideration. Or if you're ordering it, navigating, the different stores, their apps, or from the computer or your phone, or however you do that, you can compare that. But there can be a big discrepancy between stores. So for example, if I were even looking for frozen fruit, whereas I know we talked a little bit about how sometimes the frozen fruit is a savings from the fresh, it isn't necessarily like always one way or always another way. So if I were, buying an organic brand in small bags at, uh, a store that caters to organic food, and I was buying, the most popular brand of organic food, that could be much more expensive than if I were buying a large bag or the same item organic from another store. So if I were shopping, let's say, the generic organic brand at another store in a larger bag. So even frozen fruit is not like, oh, it's just a savings, it's always cheaper than buying fresh. It isn't always the case. So um, knowing like your store and knowing the brands and knowing like where the deal is, so, and where it isn't. So some of that takes, some homework, and going to the stores, and if you are an in-person shopper, doing some exploration, of the difference between, food items, some comparison shopping. And if you haven't already done that, it might be, eye-opening, to start seeing some of these differences. So I mean, even your frozen berries, I mean, like there is the cost of, physical fresh, berries at the store at whatever the market rate is for, organic berries, versus a small bag of organic berries of like the most popular organic brand is not necessarily going to be as cost efficient as, a very large bag of the store brand, even organic. But even as I say that, as we talked about on earlier slides, the amount that you're going to go through is going to matter as well, and the size of your freezer and all these things. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about stuff that is notorious for being expensive. So do you just avoid fruits and vegetables that are expensive, if you will, by the unit cost or by the pound? So there isn't necessarily one answer for that. So but certainly you shouldn't have to completely eliminate, some of these foods. So, the question is, how many of these items do you need? Is it cost savings to buy it in the bag? Is that something that even you'll ever get to? So let's say if you're looking at avocados, mangoes, and pomegranates, right? Depending on how many people you're shopping for and how fast you're going to go through it, the deal might be, like a pre-bagged type of thing or a case of it. But you can also do hand select, and making sure you're not having any waste is something to take into consideration too. So, being able to navigate how many ripe ones that you're buying versus how many are going to ripen, in the time frame that you're going to get to it, so that you don't buy everything, let's say you're buying avocados, you buy 6 ripe avocados, and then 3 days from there you have three rotten avocados. So being able to judge the ripeness to be able to buy these things to have them last. So that being said, good news for avocado lovers, there are other options, even on top of your fresh avocados. You can now find frozen avocados, even frozen avocados that have been nicely sliced. So if you're looking to, save on your avocado costs, or if you're just even trying to reduce your fat intake and you just love avocados and love the good type of fat that's in avocados, and you just want a slice for your sandwich, or a couple, slices to put on your salad, there is the option of frozen avocado, and it's nicely sliced. So, that is a plus. Also there's, guacamole, so if you're a guacamole lover, is it, truly cheaper to buy all the ingredients and make it yourself, or is it cheaper just to get a good deal on guacamole? If you're looking in the fresh food section, there might be larger containers of it. If you're going to go through that amount, that could be a deal. If you're never going to go through that amount, that could just now be a waste, in which case then you have other options. There's, guacamole that's already made in little individual containers. Some of that might be refrigerated. Even at a club store, you might be able to get like many, refrigerated ones that would have probably a pretty decent date on them, even if you don't eat them, on a daily basis. But if you're looking for, other things, yeah, the size of the cup, might matter as well. So I don't think you'll find guacamole shelf stable, but you will find it, refrigerated, which is still going to be, what is it that word I'm looking for? Less perishable, than if it's all one container that you open and now you have to, count the days from the time that you open the container. So there are a lot of pre-sealed ones that still require refrigeration, but are going to have a much better date on it. So if you just like a little bit of guacamole, not that frequently, that is an option as well. So, as far as avocados, but mangoes and pomegranates, like if again, like you just want one avocado when you want it, and it's a $3 avocado and you don't buy it often, and that might make sense too. So it isn't like everybody has to now buy frozen avocados. So, just, being able to think about, what you're using it for, how often you're going to use it, and, looking at all those variables, to figure out what's going to make sense, for your situation. Starches. So, starches. The This is a good one. Yeah, for the most part, there is usually a way to get a good deal on starches, if you look for it. So that's probably, even with a lot of inflation, if you will, or rising food costs, like if you look at the cost for a 10-pound bag of potatoes today versus 4 years ago, it's more than likely more than it was. But relative to many other things, is it still pretty cost efficient, compared to the price of some other things? It's probably, it may very well be. So, but of course, know your potato. So, that can count, that can have so many variables to it as well. So, the more exotic the potato, whether it's organic or just an exotic potato, the price is going to, be different. But depending on how many you're going to use, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't buy it. So potatoes tend to, have a lot of cost savings in them. Even some of the more expensive potatoes can be still much more cost effective than some other items, like I should give you an example. The like gourmet pasta ready-made, so just looking at everything. So looking at the price per pound, can be something, even when you're looking at rice, if you're looking at something even basic like brown rice, if you have a family, you're cooking vats of rice, then, trying to buy a lot of dried rice in bulk, may make total sense. If you're one person who doesn't like to cook, that idea may just be terrible. So you may want to look at, how to prepare rice with very minimal cooking effort, especially, since there are, costs. It isn't free, to turn on your stove or your oven or things like this. So time, effort, utilities, looking at all of that, can make sense. So if you're looking for brown rice that's already prepared, that you can find shelf stable or frozen. So again, the size of the container, how often you're going to use it. I mean, I could tell you, I definitely own individual servings of brown rice, for family members that don't eat brown rice very often, because of so many of these factors that make more sense just to keep it on hand like that, for as infrequent as it's prepared. Plus other benefits, that it's portable, that it can be taken, to a lunch or kept in a locker, to eat as needed. So there's a lot of variables like this, but generally speaking, one can find some good deals on some of the starch part of the meal if you look for it. But if you're a potato lover, I mean, if let's say and you like Yukon Gold potatoes, buying a different type of potato may make no sense. So again, that might make sense to look at different stores, comparing the different stores, as well as the different brands, and the organic versus the not organic. Sometimes the smaller potato, sometimes that the price can go up like that, or the smaller bag of the smaller potato. The smaller bag of the smaller potato in the organic form is probably going to be best, maybe even 3 times the price of some other types of potatoes in bigger bags. But it doesn't make any of these not options, just contemplating all those different factors of how you're going to use it, the amount that you're going to use, and that sort of thing, and the price even compared to some other things that you might eat, making sense of all of that. Protein foods. I don't even have meat on this slide, or eggs, so this conversation is probably going to get more expensive in a couple slides. So, but protein foods, I'm starting with some of the plant-based ones. And so I know a lot of people have been very interested in becoming plant-based, and that can have health benefits. It can also have some dollar savings, at the grocery stores. Being able to lower your intake of some of the higher dollar animal foods, by using some plant-based proteins, that can be a cost savings. It can also get you the other way, because there is so much demand for plant-based foods. There are a lot of exotic products out there that aren't necessarily cheap. And again, if you're looking at the popular brand at the not the least expensive store, that might be not a great deal. So there's you never shop with your eyes closed, right? Eyes wide open, just comparison shopping, all of these things, starting even with your beans. You can buy beans dried, cook them from scratch, package them yourself. If that just sounds like a crazy idea, then it might make sense to look at canned beans, or beans that come in little cardboard containers, if you will. A lot of stores have them like that, but ready-made beans might make sense. So tofu, dairy milks, again, looking at whether it's frozen or whether it's refrigerated or whether it's on the in the aisle. All these things are going to make a difference. So even your non-dairy milks, some of these, if it's the the major brand name and it's shelf stable, that's probably going to be more expensive per ounce than if it were a much bigger one in the refrigerator section of even a generic brand, so, or the same brand sometimes, so, but if you don't have the space for many refrigerated ones, and or you're never going to get to that amount in time before it rots, then the cost in in the aisle for the shelf stable one may make total sense, because you're not going to buy a month of refrigerated non-dairy milk. That would make no sense for most people. So comparing, the cost to animal foods, even, animal proteins, even some of the higher dollar, plant proteins may still be less expensive than some of the animal proteins. And yeah, so that's just a little bit on that. So that is an option. And I am stuck. No.
Go back to first, I think. There.
Oh, funny. Okay, got it. Okay, sorry about that. So, yeah, so again, if it's been prepackaged into little individual servings, that can be extremely convenient, or it can be just not cost efficient, so but it might make sense if you pack your own lunch and that sort of thing, having it individually wrapped, that might make sense. If you're just getting into trying different veggie burgers and you want to try different things, then you might not be buying the cheapest one on the shelf, but it may still be much less expensive than some other things. But that being said, there are a lot of really good recipes out there, to make your own burgers, and they're not necessarily even that exhausting. Some of them are quite simple, from a can of beans and some oatmeal or leftover rice, and if you have some vegetables, it can be very easy, to make that sort of thing, or it can be a lot of work. So you have to figure out, which person you are. But if you are looking for simple recipes, there definitely are some very simple recipes out there that are probably, don't get that much more difficult than even beans and oatmeal. So yeah, and if you're open to trying new things, then there are a lot of plant-based proteins out there, that can be good for your wallet and your health. Okay, dairy. This can be a tricky one. There's some beautiful parfaits there in that picture. So, which you can see have been, made, and that is something to think about. Rather than buying, let's say, little packages of flavored yogurt, if you're able to, buy a bigger container of like a unflavored yogurt, and then add your own flavoring or your own, fruit to it, that can, be a great way to save money. It can also be a great way to get more fiber in, and or decrease your intake of refined sugar. So, that can be a win-win thing. But if you just want a little container of flavored yogurt to throw in your bag and run, it might not make any sense to you. So just being able, again, to think about it, with respect to your own individual needs and your lifestyle. Cheese, the same thing. You'll find sometimes the generic or store brand, may be much cheaper than some of the name brands, but not necessarily. You could go to a club store even and find some of the name brands, at great deals. But, just being able to compare, the brands, the size, something you might be looking for is, hormone free, you might find organic dairy products. Some of them might just, say that they aren't made with, recombinant bovine growth hormone or something like that. So, just paying attention to what you're getting, for the price as well, is important. Animal proteins, that's a picture of some salmon there. And since there's a picture of salmon there, I'll just mention that sometimes you buy what looks like fresh salmon that has been frozen and then unfrozen. So if you are, buying fresh salmon, you might want to look to, see if it says fresh, never frozen, and that might tell you if you're getting it, more fresh. So as far as even something like salmon, depending on what you're using it for, you might find sometimes, even better quality salmon in a can or frozen. Um, if I haven't offended salmon connoisseurs out there by suggesting that, but the looking at the method, that it was stored in. If you're, using it for a salad, or you're making, a dish that has salmon in it, some of the canned salmon options might be, a better type of salmon. So, thinking about what your need is, and I could probably give a whole lecture just on salmon. So I'm gonna refrain from getting too heavily into some of the different varieties of fish, but thinking about what you're going to use it for. So it is important. And if you just even love something like salmon, some of the canned deals can help. And since the slide is labeled animal protein, I'm going to widen that up to navigating the cost of all of your animal protein. So again, the fresh versus the frozen versus canned, all these different factors are going to affect the cost. And sometimes you can get a better quality product that isn't, if it's not totally fresh. So, but if it is fresh, you might want to, just read carefully, especially for something like fish, and look for, fresh, never frozen. That might be something you might want to look for. But there is certainly, isn't the only thing, and it isn't always the case that that's what you'd want. But that is something to keep your eyes open for, because if you're paying extra thinking it's fresh fish and versus frozen fish, but it was frozen fish that's now been unfrozen, you could just as well buy your own frozen fish and save some money. So that's kind of the point there, is if it was frozen fish that looks like fresh fish, you can buy your own frozen fish. So and save some money. Okay, and eggs and egg substitutes. I know it's really impossible to give a lecture like this and not talk about the rising cost of eggs. So the question is, what are you using it for? Does it really have to be real eggs? Because if you're just using it, let's say, to thicken something, or you're using it as a binder, there are definitely some other things out there, from your chia seeds to your flax seeds to your tofu. There's definitely ways to replace eggs in recipes. As well as, is this just like a habit, or you just like this hot dish, on a Sunday morning? There are definitely a lot of options, from scrambled tofu to, just, scrambled vegetables, as well as the liquid eggs, comparing the price. Is it more cost effective to even buy, the eggs in a liquid form, for, whatever it is that you're planning to make? Beverages, it's like almost March here, so I'm not sure if this is as much of a possible expense as it will be in 5 months or so, when people are thirstier. So I know in the summer, people can start spending a lot of money on ready-made beverages. So and that may make sense, because you do not want to be dehydrated. But certainly there are still ways to try to navigate that and save money. So if you're able to make your own beverages at home, even flavored beverages, whether you want to flavor it with fruit or vegetables, and make your own flavored infusions, or use like different types of teas to make a nice beverage or a cold beverage and keep that on hand. Those are all options. Even adding a splash of juice, whether it's lemon juice or even a speck of grape juice, to water, you probably wouldn't need very much, just to make it, have a tinge of color, and be a palatable beverage. As far as electrolyte replacement, if your, physician, wants you to, have something like that. Sometimes buying the powdered ones, can be an option, especially for the house. If you're on the run, that might not be as practical, as having some that are already made, and avoiding dehydration is important. But if you're going to drink vats of it in your own home, sometimes buying it in the powdered form can be much more cost efficient. Not to mention, sometimes you'll see these single serving little packages, and that could be a great thing to carry with you. But if you're at home, and you're making big liters of it for your house, you might buy a bigger container, in powdered form. Might give you a lot more volume for your dollar. And condiments, I want to save some room for questions here. So condiments, definitely can make or break you, if you are addicted to, some expensive, condiments, so, comparing the brand and the size and the store are all going to matter. And in some cases, is it even necessary? Or can you just make your own seasoning with, the different ingredients that you might even be able to buy in bulk, so, I mean, even your spices can be, an interesting price at the store, compared to if you were to buy it by the pound. But then again, if there's no way that you're going to eat a pound of paprika, I would actually eat a pound of paprika. So that's an option for me. But if you're someone who isn't going to eat, past the little 2 ounces that come in the shaker, then a good deal on that, might make sense. So, same strategies, just, reflecting on all these different variables, for this type of food item. And non-food items, I was going to say I can give a whole lecture on mason jars. I actually have given a whole lectures on mason jars. I love mason jars. I can talk forever about mason jars and what you can do with mason jars. So, mason jars, if you don't know what they are, they're made of glass. They come with, regular rim size. They come wide mouth. They come in different sizes. They're even making some now that I think, have different instructions on them, as to temperature that they can, be used at, so, whether it's frozen or, if you can, do any kind of, cooking or what. So, but I like them because they're glass. I like to use less plastic. I also like them because they're multi-purpose, so it's kind of easy to store. But that being said, they, sometimes other shapes, work better. There are a lot of containers out there. So especially if you're, purchasing some things in bigger containers or bigger bags, but you do like the convenience of having things ready, you can, prep it into, smaller servings and that sort of thing, in different size containers. And so, cleaning products, sponges, these are all things, to keep your eyes open again. So from the different store to the brand to how many you're getting in the package, is going to affect all those different things that you would, need to just even maintain the storage. Same thing, even plastic bags, the brand name, not the brand name. But I will say, if you are buying plastic bags, to try and find one that does say BPA free. This is just a little grocery makeovers, just to show you how you don't need to sacrifice quality to save money. So instant flavored oatmeal, especially if it's a popular brand, even your organic flavored, ready-made instant packages, you can consider getting your quick oats and flavoring it yourself. You can even, pre-mix it, whether it's, cinnamon or date sugar. You could not only probably get more for your dollar, but you could decrease your sugar intake and that sort of thing. So we talked a little bit about the yogurts, having more, a bigger container of a better quality yogurt, and flavoring that yourself. We talked a little bit about fresh fish, how sometimes it might be a better quality of fish that you're able to get if it's, let's say, canned or in another form. a peanut butter, that's something that the cost is so different, relative to which type of peanut butter you're buying, which brand, what size. So, comparing the prices there. Brown rice, sometimes it makes sense to buy the individual rice cups, so you have to know yourself and what you're using it for and what your own needs are. Sometimes it doesn't, if rice is your mainstay and you're serving a family of 4, you go through vats of it, finding ways to quickly prepare it, prep it, and have it on hand, that might be something to think about. Same situation for canned beans and canned soups, so knowing, how you're going to use it. But, buying things sometimes semi-prepared, can be an option too, where the ingredients are semi-prepared. Like, for example, a bean soup, maybe you might buy the beans canned, and then add some of the other ingredients fresh, and that might give you a lot more volume for your dollar than if you just bought, multiple cans of the soup. So, and you might be able to even, freeze some of it, and that sort of thing. So we have time for some questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you?
Yeah.
All right. Well, gang, let's have so much stuff to consider and a lot of questions to possibly be had. So please feel free to unmute yourself and we can get it going with some questions. Don't be shy. I know one question that came up when you were talking about stores and price savings. There's a lot of times, Ralph's as one store individually that I shop at a lot, but there's always those ones that have stickers that say, 50% off, discount. I mean, it's right near its expiration, and it's usually within a day or two. What do you think of that? How does that, if you're going to eat it fully in one day, probably good, but if you're not, what do you think?
It could depend on the item, but a lot of people do that, and if it's something that can be frozen, we'll freeze it. So that could work on depending on what the item is. That's something. There's a good point you made. So shopping that, if you're going to eat it like right away, and depending on the item, sometimes something that you can store and freeze for later.
Good thinking. I do that. Save a lot of money, actually.
Yeah.
All right, some other questions. And I think Barbara said it very specifically. She has other lectures that the mason jar one is always one that we should put back on the schedule, because that truly, as we get into the summer months, that is something that I did for a summer, and then somewhere along the way I kind of got out of the practice of it, but it really was not only fun, but it was just, I think, healthier. I don't know. I felt like I ate better when doing it. I'm not sure why, but
I think it's because you can see how pretty the food looks.
Yeah, that may be. It just sits in your fridge and things. And I did oatmeal and different things, and I did a lot of different stuff, which was always fun. All right. Any questions from folks?
Hi, this is Kathy Capra. I work in information systems. Hello, everybody.
Hey, Kathy, welcome.
Thank you. Barbara, I'm just wondering, do you happen to have any like low cost meals or recipes that you might be able to share with us via email, or any links that you can recommend?
That's a good question. If I knew more specific, like of what type of recipe you're looking for, I'm sure I could probably
Find it down here.
Find your picture.
send you
here.
some links or
Yeah,
something
I
like
know.
that. But it's such a global question, that it's hard, unless you want to narrow it down to like a specific type of, food or type of recipe. You're definitely welcome to email me. And yes, if you have like specific type of recipes you're looking for.
Sure. Okay, will do. Thank you.
Hey,
I have
John,
a question.
Go ahead.
Regarding eggs, why has the price gone up so much? Is it due to the fowl being contaminated and dying or what? Why is the price of eggs so high?
Well, I am not an egg expert, but from what I read, if this is correct, there was some type of illness in the chickens. The kind of chicken that is used for eggs, which
Okay.
from what I read is not the same type of chicken that you would find in the chicken section. So and I think when they have an outbreak of a certain thing, it is very expensive, for these
Okay.
places. What they have to what they then have to do, so which creates shortages as well. So
Okay. Do
yeah.
you expect that will go down if the chickens get more healthy?
I honestly have no idea what to
Yeah.
expect,
Okay.
yes, at this point,
We're limited, we can only buy 1 dozen or whatever.
what is it?
Some stores, but not other stores.
You cut out
We're
there for a second.
buying at Trader Joe's and they limit you.
Oh, they limit how many eggs you buy.
Yeah.
Interesting. I did not know
Yeah.
that. The
Yes,
wow, I did not know that. That is interesting.
it is. Because I haven't really noticed it at other stores.
Yes. Well, they are one store that doesn't deliver, and I do miss them. So that is one store. I said I haven't been to a store in 3 years. I probably have made a couple trips to Trader Joe's. That is
Okay.
one store that I'd have to check that out though. So yeah. Well, thanks for mentioning that. I wish I knew the answer to these things, but I only know the what is self-evident, which is that the
Okay.
cost has gone up because of this situation.
And it is out there. Yeah, there's a lot of different speculation and different stuff online. But one thing on a store, I mean, I did find, we talk about eggs all the time, but it's kind of funny. I found a good deal at Costco. I mean, you got more, if you're eating a lot of eggs, it was a great value because your packages are larger. Of course, it's Costco wholesale. So there's, if you
Right.
remember, and or probably Sam's Club, similar, those are bigger box items. But you do get more. And if you're hard boiling them, then obviously that gives you longer shelf life, different things. But yeah, they were a better price than anywhere in town that I could find.
I had those in the cart and then I put them back because I knew we couldn't eat that many
Yep.
and use them up. Right.
That was exactly the concern of any time you eat in the big box stores.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
No, I forgot to mention this, but and I had meant to mention this. If you are shopping, for let's say only yourself or a smaller household, it might make sense to shop with a friend or a neighbor, and split some things, buy bigger containers of things and split them, so, for example, if they buy the huge bag of potatoes and you buy the eggs and, you split them or, adjust the, your cost between you, accordingly. That's a possibility too.
Great suggestion.
Thank
All right.
you.
Well, we're a little over time, but any last questions for Barbara, or Barbara, any last comments from you?
Oh yeah, no, I'm sorry. Well, more on the neighbor situation. Even if you physically don't go with a neighbor, sometimes if, let's say you have a friend that, who lives in your, building or next door, that makes trips to Costco that you don't make, sometimes you might be able to work something out, where you can get some things from them. And in return, if you, shop some other stores, that they don't shop, as, split some things like that, accordingly. So, but yeah, so many possibilities, but thank you for coming. Yeah.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And Barbara, thank you so much for always way over my head and things that I need to look back on. So on that note, it was recorded and it will be edited and it will be on our Eisenhower Health YouTube channel within the week, within next week. And then I'll email it out. If you registered for this through Eisenhower, then I will send it out, and I'll also send a link to each of the senior centers of our partners, and they'll blast it out as well. So you'll have that information because there was a lot of stuff to take in and there's a lot of stuff there. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and happy shopping and eating.
Mhm.
And thank you, Barbara, again. I appreciate it.
Thank you.